Hi everyone, Paul ISM. Welcome to part 6 of our car modelling techniques guide. So today, we're going to focus on the interior. This is going to be spread into two parts, so there'll be part 6 and part 7. In this part, we're going to deal with all the normal major components of the interior. So we'll show spraying up the seats, all the ancillary parts, fire extinguishers, so on and so forth. We'll then cover a bit of decaling, so we'll cover decal on the backs of the seats, the carbon areas, decal like the fire extinguishers, the dashboard, etc. And we'll show gluing all these in place, putting a wash on them, and so on and so forth. And then in part 7, we'll deal with the photo etch seat belts. A lot of people have asked how to do those, so I thought it was worth showing them in a bit more detail. And otherwise, we would have ended up with an hour and a half long video today. So it was split into two parts. So you will see right up until the seats are installed today, and then next week we'll deal with the seats installation and building the belts up as well. So yeah, hope you don't mind that, but it was the only way I could do it was showing everything properly. So right, let's carry on, let's crack at it and let's get going. Okay, so this is where we were at the end of part 5. All the running gears assembled, suspension, braking system, transmission painted and lightly weathered. We've got the roll cage assembled. That's going to need some light detail painting later on, which we'll get to near the end of this video. And for the most part, that is the running gear done. We're going to concentrate on the interior today. So I'm just going to find the appropriate page in the instruction book and we'll have a look at what we've got to do. So lots of little things to paint and weather. As you can see there, we've got the interior fire extinguishers, gear lever, handbrake lever, the seats to do, which we'll cover painting today. We've got the dashboard to decal up, the seats to decal up, and the roll cage to detail paint as well. Door cards require some painting and masking, and that's it for the most part. So we're going to start today with the seats. As you can see, we've got all the car parts cut off already. They've all been sanded and cleaned up as we did in part 5 with the running gear. Things like the steering wheel, they're all cleaned up. Again, most of these parts have a seam around the edge, so give them a good sand to remove those seams. Just have a good look at all the parts before you commit to paint. Things like the fire extinguishers are going to seam right through them as well, and it's important to get rid of them if you want them to look perfect. The seats again along the outer edge, there's a seam all the way along the outer edge on both sides, so that just requires a little bit of light sanding to remove it, and there are 3 ejector pin marks on there as well. Should you wish to deal with those, you can do. I'll be honest, I don't, because you can't really see them, and this is one of my shortcuts of what I do. So if you do wish to deal with them, you can put a little bit of filler in there, sand them smooth, or a little bit of plastic hard, and get them perfectly smooth should you wish. Once you get your carbon decal on, you can't really see them. So tools for today, we've got the seat, and as you can see on the inside there are little indentations where the side of the seat belts should go through. There's one there and one on the other side as well, and we've got a selection of tools here today to take care of those. So we've got our pin vise, we've got our drill bits in various sizes. We're probably going to go for about, I think it's about 1.2 mil I pulled out there. We've got our Subaru files and our modelling knife as well. Now, sometimes these have the marks on the outside as well, which makes life a lot easier. Sadly on this there isn't, so we're going to go from the inside in and very carefully drill through, minding not to damage A, the seat, or B, drill into your fingers. And we're just going to drill at the very back of the mark and at the very front. Just very carefully, only a little bit of pressure. Make sure you try and keep it to as much of that shape as you can. We're then going to get our nice sharp hobby knife, and again, be careful, don't go stabbing yourself in your hand. It's a fairly new blade on there. And we're just going to lightly push in between those 2 drill holes to remove that excess material. A little bit out of focus, but you can still see what I'm doing. That's it. Scrape away any excess plastic, and there you go. We've removed most of the material from that hole. Again, use the knife to your advantage, get the curve there, and just remove anything excess. We're then going to grab our round Subaru file. These files are absolutely superb. They really are. They're one of my favourite tools. And yes, we sell them at umpretail.com. Pop that in and use the curve rounded edge of the file to your advantage. These are curved either end of these holes, so You can get right in there, a little bit out of shot unfortunately, but all we're doing is removing the excess material, and as you can see we get that nice elongated hole shape. So that leaves a little bit of excess material inside, so we grab our hobby knife again and just lightly, literally wiping it away with the blade. That simple, that easy. Blow away any excess material. Good old toothbrush. And that, for the most part, should be it. There we go. So there's 4 of those to do in total. 1 on each side of every seat. And like I say, that allows us to then get the fabric belts through later on. Okay, so all the parts have been primed. And we're going to use some of the Zero Paint Texture Black to add some texture to the seats. Now, the seats, the steering wheel and the dashboard are often done. In this case today, the dashboard is grey, so we're not going to put any texture paint on that. We've got the UMP Apex, that's set at about 20 psi. And we're going to apply a light coat all over the seat to begin with, and that will give the start of our texture. And then we're going to hold it a bit further away and allow what is normally a detrimental effect, which is powdered paint, to work to our advantage. So we'll allow the paint to dry a bit before it hits the surface, and that will give us a much more 3D effect. So we're just going to lightly cover it. This is cellulose based paint, so make sure you've got a good spray booth and a respirator on, and gloves as well. It really does stink. And we're just going to lightly go around all the seat and spray it, giving it good coverage. And once we're happy we've got a little bit of paint down on the surface, we're going to hold it a bit further back, probably about 12 to 14 inches away, and spray with a bit more flow on the airbrush. So pull the trigger back a bit more. And like I say, what this does is allows the paint to dry a bit before it hits the surface and gives us a bit more of a powdered look. Just something I've picked up doing myself over time, and I think it does add to the overall effect. As you can see, if you can pick it up, it's quite hard to see on this light, there you go. We have got some texture to the seat, and it does look good. We can pass this bit onto the steering wheel next. We've masked off the centre of the steering wheel to leave that nice smooth finish and give us the variation. And we're doing exactly the same, give it a good bit of coverage and then hold it further back to give that nice textured look. And it's a good look and simple to do. So all the parts have been painted up. We've done the seats and the steering wheel in the textured paint. Everything else has either been painted in Tamiya X18 semi-gloss black, Mr. Colour red, and UMP Primer grey for the dashboard. As you can see, the texture paint on the seats work quite well. And now we're going to deal with applying the carbon decals to the back of the seat. Now these can be tricky to do. Remember the decal we did in the main decal video? You need to let the solution work. So you've got to put it on, let it soften the decals, and then get them in place. So as before, carefully cut them out. We've got no warm water today. Out of sheer laziness, I'll be honest. There's only a few decals to do. It's not worth waiting the 10-15 minutes or so for it to warm up. So I'm just using room temperature water. But what we're going to do to make life a little easier for ourselves is we're going to cut the decals into 4 sections. So I've got a little bit of light reflecting there, unfortunately, off the camera, off the overhead lights. But we're literally cutting off the top of, there you go, the carbon. Where there's a little split that allows the decal to fold, we're going to cut straight through that and section that into one section. Again, nice new sharp blade. And we're then going to cut the side sections into 3. So we've got a side piece for each side and a center section. Now trust me, this works a lot better than trying to put the decal on in one. It's smaller, manageable, more manageable parts, and they seem to set a little bit better as well. You are still going to get a few wrinkles, and you may get a couple of ever so slight gaps as well, but they are particularly tricky to do, these decals. We've got our satin solutions, Micro Set, Sol, and Walther Solver set there in the appropriate bottles, 1, 2, and 3. The decals soaking in some water, and we've got our trusty water pen. It's ready to rock and roll. I'm going to remove any blue tack or white tack from underneath, because once the satin solution starts to hit though, it doesn't like it at all and it starts to melt it. So the decal's been soaking for a good 30 seconds. We're going to give it a little bit longer, and we're going to go through the exact same steps as last time when we were decaling. So we're going to start with this microscale microset first, put a little bit on, pop the decal on. We're going to get remove as much moisture as we can from underneath. Apply the microsol, let that work for 10 minutes or so. Again, get rid of as much as we can from underneath with the brush, and then finally let it set with the Walther's solver set. And like I say, we'll deal with each part in sections until we get it all on. And to me, this is the best way of doing it. Trying to get the decal on in one, it's just a recipe for disaster. It really is. I don't think I've ever got one on in one piece. We've had it split in, or literally fall into bits, or just looking terrible. So exactly the same decal and procedures before. Make sure it's off its backing paper. Get it in place. Just bear in mind how brittle some of those decals were last time as I go and rip it off. Like so. And just really take your time. Like we said in the decaling video, let the set solutions work for you. Don't try and force the decals because they will split. So get it roughly in place. You can see the decal follows the natural curves of the seat. And then get our water pen, add some more microset, and just help it get into all the nooks and crannies and work its way around. Now on the side there's no provision for the holes we drilled earlier, and we're not going to worry about those just yet because it makes more of a mess than good. So we're going to leave those be, and then once the decal is nearly dried, we'll use the knife to cut a slot and then the setting solution to fold it through. So don't worry about those holes in the side just yet, just concentrate on getting the decal in place. Again, I'm going to keep saying it, let the setting solutions work for you. So there's microsol. So this will start now to soften and conform the decal. I'm just going to put a couple of light coats on, and then literally we'll put that decal to one side for 10 or 15 minutes and let the setting solution do its job. So rather than watching me decal the whole seat, I've sped this section up a little bit. So like I say, we're just going to deal with each section, a section at a time, making sure they butt up to each other as good as possible. And as I said about 12 times now, let the setting solution work for you. Don't commit to the solver set until you're happy the decal is in place where you want it, because once you get the solver set on, there really usually is no going back whatsoever. Be aware of anything splitting on you like I just had done there. If it does, because it's carbon, because it's a pattern but a small pattern, you can patch it back together really well. So don't worry if it does split, but obviously try and not allow it to. So this is all the seat all decaled now. So the carbon decals are on the back. Got a bit of white tack still at the bottom there to remove. There's several decals on the front as well. Sparco and what have you on the back headrests, front and back, and one on the leading edge of the seat as well. We've also decaled the dashboard up as well. So there's 3 or 4 decals on the dashboard, as you can see, from the exact same steps as the standard decal, and the instrument panel as well, which glues on separately, and both fire extinguishers are decaled up as well. We've also detail painted the silver on one of the fire extinguishers, and decaled up the partial shelf in the car as well. So there you go. Pretty simple, not a lot of real decaling to do. Just take your time as always, and that's it. We masked up the door cards, so we sprayed them in Tamiya X18 semi-gloss black, masked up the very edges of them as per the instructions, and then sprayed grey UMP primer, the same colour we sprayed the dashboard. There is some other detail paint required. We're not going to do that. If you wish to do it, by all means do it. We'll add some detail later on with a wash. Moving on, we've got the handbrake lever, which has been painted X18 and then detail painted in some Citadel mithril silver, which I believe is called, is it Rungfang silver now? As to his accelerator pedal. And we've given our ECU boxes, what have you, a wash as well. They're painted in Tamiya X18 and given a grey wash. Now, we've got the protective parts of the roll cage to paint. So the very sides of them are black, and we're going to use model colour 7950 black to do this. We're going to thin it with a little drop of water and detail paint all the parts. So we've got the entire side at the bottom is black, and then all what would be foam protective parts for important parts of the car where heads or helmets can hit the roll cage. Adds a little bit of protection to the driver and co-pilot. So we're going to hand paint these. I did look at masking them, but they just look like an absolute nightmare to do. So rather than mucking around doing that, I thought we'd give it a hand paint. I often do this. They'll either be black or grey. And I'll be honest, I didn't even check the colour. I think it is black. This is the way I do it. Like I say, I model for myself, and I'll do the appropriate colours what I see fit. Look at the instructions, it is black. But, I built a lot of cars, and I can't tend to do a lot of the painting off my own back now. So we've got a nice wide 1/2 inch Tamiya flat brush. And we've put a single drop into our Vallejo model black. Just make sure you don't get any excess paint. If you do, the beauty of the model colour is you can wipe it right off like I just did. And the key to getting a nice smooth finish brush painting is to not drop the roll cage like that. But more importantly, go over the part as least times as possible. You don't want to be going over that paint once it starts to dry, because it'll pick it up, it'll roll it, and it'll look really bad. So load the brush up enough that you're not putting tons of paint down, but you are getting good coverage with as little strokes of the brush as you can. And it's just a case of painting the side and over the top. We're not putting masses of paint on, but we're just getting enough. It's going to give us the coverage in one go. And this will give us a nice smooth look. Now you can thin model colour with UMP thinner should you wish. I just find it's a little bit better with water. And just with my own experience, I find with brush painting, it gives you a little bit more time to work with the paint. The alcohol evaporating away out the thinner can cause it to dry a little bit quicker, which when you're airbrushing is advantageous sometimes. But brush painting, I think you just need that a little bit longer to allow the paint to settle and it to be worked where you want it. We're just going to go around the entire roll cage until all the parts are painted. Trying to be as neat as possible. Like I say, when the paint is wet, you can wipe it off. And even when it's dry, you can put a little bit of water on a cotton bud, or even if you're careful, a little bit of UMP airbrush cleaner, and just lightly wipe away the excess. Because we're painting over lacquer paint, the UMP airbrush cleaner isn't as quick to react with it, and it can remove the excess paint, no bother. Like I say, take the time to do this neatly, and it will pay off and look a lot better. Don't be worrying as much to get right to the very edges where the parts roll over at the top, because we will add a wash to that later, and that can add to the edge to give that look that it's finished. But like I say, just take your time, be as neat as possible. Okay, so there we go. There's all the roll cage detail painted now. Let's look at the part. Like I said, we'll add a wash to that later on. Now we're going to deal with the dashboard and add a little bit of detail to some of the buttons, switches, etc. Make it look a little bit interesting. As you can see, it does call out 4 colours on the buttons and switches. It's calling out for Tamiya X2 and X7. We're going to go a bit further and add a little bit of black to it as well. And, you know, you can use a bit of artistic license if you wish. So for the white, we're going to use UMP white primer. Why is that? Well, it's a very nice white to start with. It's one of the best covering whites I've got. And we're going to use Tamiya. I'm not going to use the clear red as I've just shown there. I'll realise that in a minute, as you'll see. But we're going to use Tamiya X7. I picked up the wrong bottle of paint, as I will become fully aware of in a minute. So add a couple of drops of the white UMP primer, well shook. We're going to use a cocktail stick or a toothpick. Add a little bit of paint to it, and then just lightly touch it on the buttons. Now you can follow the instructions to the letter should you wish and paint every button as it calls out, or you can add a little bit of artistic license, which is what I'm going to do, and just paint a few of the buttons to add a little bit of interest. Now don't make it look like the Starship Enterprise. We don't know multicolored blues, yellows, greens, but I think add a bit of white, a couple of red, a few red, and the rest in black. Adds a bit of visual interest, and makes it look a bit more appealing. So I'm not really following exactly the instructions. I'll normally do it for like the reds and what have you, because they're normally pretty important buttons. The Tamiya has figured out where they go. But for the most part, we're doing white, red, and black. So I'm just picking these at random now. And all you got to do is very lightly touch the cocktail stick to the button, and it will leave enough paint behind to simulate that button. Then going to move on to the clear red, which we're not going to, and it'll become apparent now when I open it and go, no, it's not that one. That's the one we want. X7. So again, we sped this section up a little bit. And like I say, we're going to add the red sparingly, not a lot of these, to a few strategic places. And then we'll come back in and add some black too. Once all those parts have been painted and left to dry, we're going to apply a wash. We've got one of the Tamiya panel line markers here. We're just going to light wash around all the buttons and any recesses or gaps around the dashboard. Once dry, we'll wipe off the excess and that'll leave a nice weathered look. Once the parts have been given a wash, allow them to dry. The panel liners are enamel, but they do dry particularly fast. You then go around with the Santador. Somebody's asking what the Santador was. It's an odorless mineral spirit, so it can be used to thin oils or enamels, and it can also be used to remove excess as well. It's made by Winsor & Newton, and like I say, once it's all dry, we'll go around, remove the excess, and leave a nice weathered look behind. Okay, so we've got the Molotow liquid chrome pen. This is a 2mm one. If it'll focus, we'll see. There we go. They do a 2mm and a 1mm. And what we're going to do the straps that we normally have to be masked and painted. And we're going to use the chrome pen to gently apply the strapping. Now, if you do go over a little bit, don't worry. You can wipe it off for quite some time. It's very delicate. Even when it's dried, it's almost able to be wiped off. It's not the most resilient of paints. But as long as it's something you're not going to be handling, it's good. Really good. If you do go over ever so slightly, don't worry. We're going to put a wash on this later, and the wash will tie both colours together. But I find dabbing it works well. But because of the size of 2mm nib, there is a chance it can flood over the edge. I think I've got a little bit that's flooded over there, which I'll wipe off in a second with a cocktail stick. As you can see, it's a bit quicker than masking it and saves a bit of time. So as you can see, I'm going to grab a clean cocktail stick, and the top right part, we're just going to gently wipe it away. Any excess, and job done. Like I say, it's very delicate, so don't go handle it now. And once you get a wash on it, it will look a lot better than it does now. We can do the same with the straps around the extinguishers. Now, the nib's different on the 2mm to the 1mm. It flows a bit easier on the 2mm. So use them for whichever purpose you see fit or best. As you'll see later on in the series when we do the light clusters, I use both. I use the 2mm to get the majority of it in there, and then the 1mm to get into the corners. So just take your time, and they go on great. So this is the 1mm one. Now as you can see, it's a completely different nib, and we're just going to use that now to get into the tighter areas where the 2mm nib will make a bit of a mess. So again, you can brush paint these should you wish. You can mask them and airbrush them, but for me, this is a quick way of doing it. Not necessarily the neatest, but it's certainly by far the quickest. Now on this extinguisher, we've painted the handle in Citadel Mithril Silver, which is one of the Citadel Wargaming paints. They changed the names a long time ago, but I've been left with a few bottles of the Mithril Silver. I think now it is called Rungfang Steel. I might be wrong, but I'm sure they changed the name to that. And in my opinion, they're the best acrylic metals that I've certainly tried anyway. Okay, so now inside the car, there's a little chrome sticker that needs applying to the driver's footwell. So the easiest way of doing this is if we cut out the template that's on the instructions, like so. Obviously, double check on the other side there's nothing you need. And then we can cut it to shape, and then place it over the sticker and cut it perfectly to size. It's a metallic sticker. I think it's imitating like an aluminium footplate. But a little bit of careful trimming, and we can cut this thing out perfectly. You're going to have to put the driver's footrest in place as well beforehand. Well, I would anyway, just to make things a bit easier for yourself. And then once that's glued in place, we can stick the sticker down. So there we go. Cut it to shape, get the angles, make sure it's nice and straight. And then we can grab our sticker. We can offer it up. So you can always draw around on the back of it with a pencil, or literally simply, I will grab my Tamiya decal tweezers, which are fantastic scissors. Tamiya decal scissors, which are fantastic scissors. Nice and sharp, and very accurate at cutting as well. And they're ideal for this job. Now, if you don't get it perfectly straight, don't worry, you can always trim it to suit later. As we can see, it is a nice metallic sticker. Really does conform and fold into place, as you'll see in a minute. So as you can see, starting to get a bit of a mess on my bench. It isn't always spotlessly clean. I do have a little A4, I call them a sacrificial mat, that gets glue and paint all over to save destroying my larger mats. So we're just offering this up. Not about fit. And that's when I think, I'll grab the footrest. So with the footrest glued in place, we're taking the backing sheet off the decal, get the adhesive down, and then use a nice new soft cotton bud. We're going to make sure we're in A, the right place, and then B, push it down and burnish it into all the recesses and the corners and what have you, and get it right into position. Like I say, get a clean cotton bud, and we're just going to lightly rub over the top, pushing it down to all those recessed areas, as you can see. And again, gives a really nice look, imitates that aluminium plate. To be honest, on the real car, it would probably just be a straight across plate. It wouldn't conform into that footwell. But for what we got here, this is what we got. Right, so we got some of the Rocket Deluxe Materials CA glue decanted into a pot, and we're going to start putting the interior together. We're going to start with the rear partial shelf. So a couple of dabs of CA glue on the bottom. There are a couple of locating points. Push those in place, double check from the rear. It is a little bit tricky to get them in. They require a little bit of persuasion, and once they're in, they are glued in place. So what we're going to do now, we're going to start assembling all the interior parts, and what we're going to do quickly is get our Molotov pen, and inside the co-pilot's footrest is a wheel brace, or a tire iron if you're American. It's molded in place into the footrest, and as you can see, the Molotov pen makes really quick work of it. Superb. Very good. And we've also got a fire extinguisher to place in here as well. And again, we're just going to pop all the bits in, paying attention to the instructions, making sure everything's orientated the right way. A lot of the parts are handed. They are the studs and the plugs are handed, so one's bigger than one side, so you can't get them in the wrong way. But still pay particular attention to make sure they do go in the correct way. So there we go. There's for the most part the interior in. Just going to place the roll cage in for a test fit. And it all fits in perfectly. Now we don't want to install this yet till the seats are in. And we'll be dealing with the seats and the seat belts in part 7. So there we go. That's where we're at today. Plenty done. Still a bit to do. Like I said, we're back in part 7 to get those seat belts built up using the photo etch, the ribbon, etc. And get them installed inside the car and get that roll cage in as well. So like I said, a bit of a pain to split it into 2 parts, but I thought it's worth spending a little bit of time to show those belts being made, because nobody knows how to make the belts, and they can be a little bit tricky. So there we go. I hope you found that useful today. Like I said, we're back next week, as always, and get them nearer and near to completion of this beautiful car. So there you go. As always, check out the International Scale Modeller Facebook page and forum. Check out umpretail.com. Check out my Paul ISM modelling page. Check out the modelling hangout group for the Off Air Hangouts. And check out the Live at the Bench modelling page as well for all details about our live show that's on every Friday, 7:30 UK, 8:30 Europe, 1:30 Central US. So there we go. So I'll see you all next week for part 7. Take care, and bye-bye.